The hero struck the goblin with his sword. He wondered what the fuck it was. It was like he was in a game. The hero wondered if this was really a game. Before that, he was standing in front of the road and waiting for a traffic light. He thought that this traffic light was switching too slowly and looked at his phone. There he saw a detailed review of the game Blade and Dare. He thought about the fact that it is a highly regarded classic and it brings back memories. The hero thought that although the creator was a famous company with a lot of experience, but the game itself was not so successful. At that time, this project was a real innovation. The hero spent tons of time in it during his college years. He recalled that it was his last game as he saw the girl standing next to him go forward and a truck was bearing down on her. The hero dropped his cell phone. He ran forward to push the girl away and didn't realize what the fuck he was doing. He realized he had been run over by a truck. He hoped the girl wasn't hurt. He thought how cold it was and that it looked like he was dying. He thought that if he had known it would turn out this way, he would have played another round of Kyo. He heard a voice that said it would grant his wish. The hero woke up. He was wondering if he wasn't dead when a truck crashed into him. He was in a cave and he had a feeling that he had been here before. Besides, if you look at the blade in his hand, he looked at his reflection in the blade and thought he was being played a joke on. The hero realized that it was a character from the game Blade and Dare, Rex Terrain. He thought it was safe to assume that he had actually been reborn in the game world, but he didn't understand why he had been reborn as this particular persona. Rex Terrain is ultimately just useless. His skills are terrible compared to the other heroes, and being on the same level as them, he has no potential. After all, he is only needed to help players at the very beginning of the walkthrough. The hero thought that now was not the time to whine, and he needed to scout the situation and make sure he was safe. Taking into account the plot and the monsters here, it is likely that this is the first dungeon, Cave of Trials. Rex's hometown, the great city of Ashes, should be nearby. He decided that first, he needed to get to the city, and then he would see. Suddenly, the hero realized that if this was indeed the world of Kaio, this city would be destroyed by hordes of monsters during the event. The game begins by selecting a character from 7 choices. Given where the hero is now, the player had to choose the story of a city kid that dreamed of becoming an adventurer. It all begins with the hero assembling a group of 3 girls around his age. The hero's group starts off as a new adventurer squad and heads to the Cave of Trials, but since the hero has the status of Chosen One, they awaken a demon that was sealed in the deepest part of the cave. They miraculously stay alive thanks to the experienced adventurer Rex Terrain who happened to be in the cave and managed to save them. But as soon as they get out of the cave, they are faced with a horrible scene, an attack on the city of Ashes. In the aftermath, the city was taken over by monsters and it became known as the Ash City of Monsters. Here players could even encounter a high-ranking monster. If Rex escapes to another city, he will manage to survive, but the hero will die. The death of a character as important as Hero could entail the destruction of the entire game world, meaning that Rex has no other choice. He needed to stop Hero before he activates the dungeon. Although the paths here were quite confusing, he still remembered several routes as he had passed through here a great number of times. The flow of the story would be disrupted, but that wasn't his problem. The hero thought that he was an ordinary worker and things like saving the whole world were beyond his capabilities. He ran and thought it was bad that the last remaining zone was the printing place. He saw 4 people and wondered if he could change the outcome of the coming event. He shouted to the hero to stop and not to touch that door. He looked back and Rex stepped closer. He didn't realize what to do now. He thought that the seal should be broken after the hero touches the door. And if he was wrong in his conclusions, then it might mean that the hero of this story is not the city kid that dreamed of becoming an adventurist. Rex was approached and asked who he was, calling him an old man. He was very surprised. The girl told Red that it was rude. He turned away. The other girl said that it was after all a rank adventurer, Mr. Rex. Rex thought that he should behave appropriately and said that he shouldn't call him Mr. D. That girl said she was his biggest fan and was honored to meet him. She asked permission to shake his hand. He embarrassedly agreed. Red said he was sure it was only because he had become an adventurer quite a while ago and asked if the rank was that cool. The girl shouted that of course it was, that the moment he became an adventurer at the age of 15, He already had over 1,000 missions completed and a success rate of over 95%. Moreover, every single mission was completed alone despite the fact that their complexity required at least an organized group of adventurers. Until just a little while ago, last year to be exact, all his achievements were finally noticed and he was promoted to a rank. This means that he is the third single adventurer who has managed to reach such heights. It has been 52 years since the last appearance of such a person. This is truly historic, and if Mr. Rex reaches S rank, he will be the first person in the entire country who has ever managed to do so. Red said he understood and agreed. In the game itself, Rex was not considered that outstanding, but in the in-game world, or at least in the eyes of this girl, Rex seems to be an incredible person. Rex thought about the fact that, alas, he would have to destroy all of this girl's illusory fantasies. The other girl said that she was very embarrassed by her friend's behavior and was glad to meet Mr. Rex. She said that her name is Nuku and she is a magician. Nuku said that the guy's name is Red and he is their knight. The girl that is no way behind him, Mana, the healer. About the third girl, she said it was Plana, an archer, and she wasn't much of a talker. Rex said he could see that some of them recognized him. His name is Rex Terrain. He is an adventurer like them. He came here to scout the dungeon. Recently, there was a report that a monster broke the seal and is about to break out. But apparently nothing bad has happened yet. Since they are still new, he would advise them to stay away from that door. Nuku told the boys that they should leave. Red said that the frail old man had gotten a rank, and was he sure he wasn't bullshitting them about it? Plana said the ones who talk the most are often the most useless. Red asked what she was yapping about. They were asked to stop. Plana said she meant that wimps tend to act noisy. Nuku said she was sorry that Rex had to see them off. He replied not to worry, and that they were on their way anyway. On the way they came across a cave with goblins. Red drew his sword and asked Nuku to cover him with magic. Rex calmly asked him to deal with them himself. He used identification and looked at the goblins' characteristics. He thought that seeing the status window in the real world was a real cheat, but he was glad that he could still use the game functions. Red said he didn't have to interfere, calling him grandfather. Rex said not to worry and just stand behind. He decided to use the active skill first and wounded the goblin with his blade. He thought he could use his arts, skills that can be applied in exchange for mana points. It's a trump card for physical damage. The other goblin targeted Rex. The latter thought that such a clumsy attack would never get him and deflected it with a parry. He then chopped down the goblin, thinking that there was one more left and he should try out something else. He decided that he would manually guide his sword using the motions that were ingrained in his head. He easily chopped the goblin in two. Rex exhaled. Nuku asked what kind of art was that, adding that he didn't look like a normal V/. Rex thought that the punch he had tried out on the third goblin was art's handiwork. In the game, all he had to do was press a key combination, and the character would immediately perform the skill. The feature of the Kyo was that it allowed him to use a motion controller. Thanks to this, the player could apply the art with specific movements, and if the manual execution succeeded, depending on the accuracy of the hit, the enemy would receive additional damage. Rex brought up the motion controller that is so important in Kyo, and that it is sold separately. This was the reason for a lot of the negative feedback. He thought that in order to fully enjoy the process, you have to buy not only the game itself, but also the motion controller. Not to mention that if you want to use both hands, you have to buy 2 controllers at once, so only 2 controllers cost 16,000 yen. He thought that in short, hand application is an option that is only available to players who have spent a lot of money and time on Kyo, and that's just the way it is. He realized that this was a power he had commandeered by spending 23,760 yen. Rex realized that he couldn't tell them about it, and said that he could only say that there was a wide variety of skills. Nuku said that it was unbelievable and arts really weren't that simple. Suddenly, they noticed something strange. Looking at the City of Ashes, they all realized that it was on fire. It all made sense to Rex, and he thought what an idiot he was, that he should have just used his brain and realized it early. Suddenly, from behind the trees, they saw a flying monster and a man lying next to it, shouting that there was something there. Rex recognized this place and this event. He thought he would deal with it later and rushed through the bushes. He was called out. He used a lightning strike, but didn't hit the monster. He thought that he had already died once trying to save someone's life, and that he really wasn't learning anything. Rex shouted that it was only a gargoyle after all and used the sacred strike, passing his blade right through the monster. The monster was defeated, and Rex realized that surprisingly, the combination of speed boost and flank attack still worked, but that wasn't the most important thing right now. He asked the girl if she was alright. The woman replied wearily, "Thank heavens." She called Rex her brother. He was very surprised. He thought about the city, the monsters, the escape, and now everything was coming together. In the plot of the game, the town will be attacked at the moment of leaving the cave. After that, a girl will be found lying near the town. She is an ordinary townswoman, and she is also Rex's younger sister, and if he is not mistaken, her name is Lucilia. Before her heart stops, Lucilia tells her brother about the attack on the town and asks him to run away from the place. This is an incredibly emotional beginning that instills a sense of hopelessness in the player. Rex decided like hell he was going to let that happen. He used the feature to store items, inventory, and pulled out a healing potion. He doused her wound with the potion and hoped she would be fine now. The team told Rex that things were extremely bad. He replied that they needed to get the hell out of here. Red asked what about the town. Rex replied that even if they went there, they wouldn't be able to save anyone. Red shouted that the place was Mana's hometown and her family and loved ones must have stayed there. Mana turned to him. She suggested to run away. Rex said he was sorry. He wondered where they should flee to. He knew that there were 2 settlements to advance to from this city. The first one was the night village of Yumina in the north. He thought that if they went to Rikishiya, before they reached the village, they would be attacked by gargoyles, even though he would try to fight them back. But the gargoyles would have a numerical advantage. In the end, 3 girls would be killed and only Hiro and Rex would be left alive. If they head to Yumina in the north, the group will encounter the boss from the end of the game. Rex alone will try to hold him off. The group will miraculously reach the village, but Rex will be mercilessly killed. He thought both options were just awful. If they went east, the 3 girls would die. But if they went north, he would die. He thought that this was too shitty a situation, that he was just an ordinary laborer, and he was not capable of deciding when it came to people's lives. He was distracted from his thoughts by a startled crew. He figured that if he had to choose between 2 victims, it didn't matter what he chose. Rex suggested going back to the cave. The hero was surprised. Rex decided it would be better to choose the third option. Red asked what was the point of going back to the cave at all, adding that if they blocked the entrance, they would have nowhere to run to. Rex replied that it wasn't a problem and there were 2 entrances leading into the cave. He thought that when it was a game, he could only follow the story. But he realized that it was no longer a game but reality. The Cave of Trials dungeon is connected to another high-ranked dungeon, Path of the Winged Dragon. Once the player clears the Path of the Winged Dragon, the shortest path in the deepest part of the cave is revealed to him. Rex was glad to see that here as in the game, there is a rope ladder. Nuku said she never would have thought there was a passage through here. Rex said not to let their guard down and that the wyvern's nest was right in front of them. Red asked to get out of here as soon as possible. Rex pointed out which way the exit was and asked to wait here for a minute, walking off into the darkness. The hero called out to him. Rex thought that if it was the same as in the game, it must be somewhere nearby and used the bandit's sight. Seeing a glow in the distance, he realized it was here. He brought his hand to the ground and used the gathering. Red asked what he was doing here. Rex replied that as he could see, he was gathering. He said to watch your step, adding that this water is poisonous. Red asked who would ever collect anything in a situation like this. Rex replied that he was doing so precisely because of the situation they were in, that this mystic liquid was dangerous if it got on their skin, but if they drank it, it would raise their stats, and it was quite useful in battle. The hero asked if it was true that it was poison. Rex said not to worry, that the healing phantom dust would suppress all the negative effects of the mystic liquid. Hero said he had never heard of something like that. Rex said that as Hero sees it, it's pretty valuable stuff, and as it is, they should be prepared for the worst. Red looked scared. All he had in his mind was running away from the city. He had never tried to prepare for anything. Red took Rex's blade and held it out to him. telling him that being in enemy territory, the sword was worth keeping to himself. The man replied that the hero was right and thanked him. He asked if Red was jealous of him because of the sword. Hero shouted that it was nothing of the sort. Rex said that if he died, Red could safely take it for himself. The hero said not to say such things, adding that in general, he didn't need that sword. Rex said he was just kidding and called out to go. He thought about the fact that his death would not happen. He decided that he would not let it happen. The heroes saw the town and were glad they did. Rex thought about the monsters and concluded that they didn't seem to be following the team. Nuku thanked Mr. Rex and said that if it wasn't for him, their whole group might have died. The latter replied that it was not necessary and that it was nothing. Mana said that was true, and that never one of them would have thought of running through the cave. Red said that he believed that a rank was not a meaningless label, but not that he cared. Rex was glad that he had been able to avoid bad scenarios. He thought that, unlike the game's plot, they had managed to complete the first quest without letting anyone die. His musings were interrupted by Plana telling Rex that something was approaching from the sky. The latter asked if they had been tracked, adding that there was only one monster. Looking up, he was very surprised. The ground was rising. The heroes could barely stay on their feet. Rex used an ability that allowed him to see the monster's characteristics. He thought that he was being bullied, and that this guy was the worst outcome. The Fatal Demon, a huge monster with wings and horns, appeared in front of the team. He wailed loudly. Rex realized that this was the monster that killed him in the game's story. It was the sudden and horrible moment of the event. Rex is already used to the life of an ordinary middle-aged office worker. One day, while driving home, he saved a girl who was about to be hit by a truck. It cost him his own life. When he came to his senses, he realized that he was reborn as Rex. He was the character that helped the protagonist at the beginning of the plot of his favorite game. Without the protagonist, the starting quest would have been really hard. But thanks to his knowledge, he managed to complete the quest without a single casualty. At least, he thought so. The monster roared menacingly. Rex and Red prepared their swords for the attack. They didn't realize what it was. The monster was the Fatal Demon. Rex thought what crap it was, and what was coming out was that his choice didn't matter at all. He thought that in the game, the Fatal Demon was an incredibly strong opponent that took Rex's life, that he had no chance of winning. Rex gave Lacilia to Nuku and asked him to take care of her. The girl agreed to do so. He shouted to run to the city and bring help. He shouted that he would try to delay him. Red objected. He said the old man could not fight him one-on-one. Plana shouted that she realized she would be sure to bring help, and she and Nuku ran. The hero said that he too would fight. Mana supported him and said that at least she would be able to heal them. Rex was against it. He yelled that they wouldn't be able to resist him. He took out Mystic Liquid and Healing Phantom Dust from his inventory. Rex yelled that he needed 5 minutes, that they should just stand there and wait for 5 minutes. The monster looked intimidating. It aimed at Rex. He thought he had seen this movement even more often than he had seen his own parents' faces. He used the hereditary spear art, Sting, and attacked. The sword simply reflected. He realized that he wasn't doing any damage. He realized that they had too much difference in characteristics. He thought that it didn't mean he could just give up and used parrying against the Fatal Demon's attack. The monster roared. Rex thought he had time to think of tactics. Suddenly, he realized that the move was followed by an AO strike, and parrying wouldn't work. He used the special spear art, Wave Strike, and thought that it looked like he would have to be more assertive. He decided to strike with his own art, thus leveling all of his attacks. He used Patterned Cut. Rex shouted that this was not the end and used Quick Cut. This was followed by the Sacred Strike. Red watched and thought it was unbelievable. The Fatal Demon was getting up from his knees. Rex used the Earth Stream Spear Art. He was followed by Triple Blade. Red shouted that the blow had missed, but Rex thought it was the perfect line and used the High Art. Red saw that he was using 2 art symbols at once and didn't realize if that was even possible. Rex used U-Slash and launched a powerful attack. The monster screamed and blood was spurting from its arm. Rex asked how he felt and if it was unpleasant. The technique he just used is called Double Art. It allows him to combine arts and use the High Art skill. High Art is a skill that increases attack damage but costs twice as much MP. But activating it while manually performing an art allows him to reselect the art. Basically, it's a bug in the system. Double Art sums the increased damage of 2 arts at once, so he can deal massive damage to an opponent he originally couldn't even scratch. Rex realized that he was already at his limit and wondered if he could stand up to him. Red shouted to him and asked if he was okay. The man smiled. He said not to worry. He said there was no way he was going to let that thing take one step in their direction. At this point, he felt more with his heart than with his head. Rex thought that if this world was something like a story, the hero of this world would definitely be someone like him. He thought that this should finish him off and used Claw Claw, dealing heavy damage. With his next strike, he used High Art and Square Slash. Raising his sword upwards, he shouted loudly, and he got a triple art. He used the triple blade. It was a very powerful attack. Everything went up in the air. Rex already thought he had won. Suddenly, blood spurted out of his mouth. Red and Mana looked at him in horror. The monster had pierced his chest through with his hand. He saw this picture. It was exactly as it was in the game itself. He thought that means it's impossible to win in this event. Rex fell to the ground. He thought that even though he had tried to change the course of events, that was all he was good for. He knew that if the protagonist died, the game would be over. But he was not the protagonist. Let him die. But life would go on, and he had paved the way for these people. He mentally told the demon to get his ass ready, adding that he certainly would be, but Rex didn't have time to finish the sentence. He was called out by Red. He said it couldn't be. Mona sadly said the name of the deceased. The fatal demon looked toward the hero. The one was frightened. He told Mona to run, that she must survive no matter what. Suddenly, arrows flew towards the monster. It was the arrival of Nuku and Plana who brought the soldiers. They were frightened after seeing what had become of Rex. Right in front of the team stood the fatal demon with glittering eyes. One of the soldiers shouted that the monster was gathering. The one flapped its wings. A soldier said it wanted to take off. Another asked if there was anything they could do. Red began to speak. He said he would try to provoke him and let them guys attack with their magic. Nuku yelled at Red for saying such a thing. Red knew, he understood everything perfectly. He was not a hero, but he was watching him with his own eyes. The image of the hero he had admired so much since childhood. The image of someone who fearlessly confronts a powerful opponent. He thought of Rex, who had sacrificed his own life to give them hope. He could not let that sacrifice be in vain. Red thought he was the most ordinary kid. He was incredibly far from the definition of a hero, but at least for now, he was going to be a hero. He ran straight at the monster, swinging his sword. He threw punches at the fatal demon. Suddenly, the monster clenched Red into a fist, so that blood spurted from his mouth. Nuku called out to Red. He shouted to her now to activate the spells. Mana yelled that because then it would hit him too. Nuku yelled that like hell they would go for that. Red shouted that even though the monster was on the verge of exhaustion, but it could still kill dozens or even hundreds of civilians, they should finish it off here and now. Nuku was in suspense. Red shouted to do it, then Nuku began to conjure. Mana screamed, asking him to stop. Suddenly someone chopped the demon's arm and Red was able to free himself. He thought he spoke after all. It was Rex. He said that Red should always be prepared for the worst case scenario and asked if that was true. Red looked at him cheerfully. He smiled and said that the hero was late. Rex smiled. He thought he might have died twice in such a short period. Mana turned to Red and Mr. Rex joyfully. She thanked the master and said she was very glad that they were both safe and sound. Nuku and Plana were angry with Red. The team asked how Mr. Rex managed to survive. He replied that it was because of an item he had used before the battle began. He said that when he used the mystic liquid, all the characteristics were temporarily enhanced, but after 10 sec, the person was severely exhausted, and to prevent this, he used the healing phantom dust. But that wasn't the main purpose. Its main power was that after 5 minutes, it returned the person to the state they were in while using the dust. Mona said in surprise, which meant that not only did it remove all the negative effects, but it also saved his life. When the item is used, after 5 minutes, It returns to the state the person was in at the time of application, and if used correctly, one can prevent one's death. Rex thought that during the course of the game, once the GH dies, the game comes to an end. So, Phantom Dust was considered a useless item. He wasn't sure how it would work, but he thought he should be glad he was only a minor character. Suddenly, someone asked if people could heed her voice. The soldiers did not realize this. In the sky, they saw a girl. She addressed the people, calling them her dear children, sons and daughters, and asked if her voice had reached their ears. She said that after many thousands of years, the sealed evil deity Razolfi was once again trying to break free from its shackles. She said that if the shackles were broken, Razolfi would be the end for all living things, and this time, he would do anything to envelop their entire world in a black shadow. So she prayed to them. Their power would become indispensable in the fight against the dark god. She asked them to destroy the statues that so exuded all sorts of miasmas. She said they were hidden in 12 dark ruins. The girl said they only had 3 years left. She begged, pleaded for them to sleep their world. Everyone realized that this was the goddess savior. Rex thought he had succeeded in escaping death in the first event, but he was still too weak. He thought the fatal demon was a high-ranked monster, but there are countless terrifying creatures in the game that are much stronger than him. Rex realized that in order to prevent the evil deity from reviving, it was necessary to defeat many monsters and go through a huge number of trials. He clenched his hand into a fist and thought that sweat why he was going to. He was going to dump everything on the main hero and enjoy a carefree life. Up to this point, he had trashed a lot of hero work, but now nothing was required of him. At this time, Nuku was thinking that as expected of Rex-san, he wasn't the least bit amazed. Rex thought that of course he would help if anyone needed to make sure the world didn't end. He would put in some effort and give his support, but saving the world and sacrificing his own life were the main hero's concerns, not his. He thought that first, he should make a little money. After all, money rules the world. He was going to use every bit of his knowledge about this game. Red thought that after the words of the goddess, Rex began to look even more confident and admired him. And the latter decided that after all, he was going to take his own path. He didn't think he was a hero. And had he taken the easiest way out by dumping all the difficulties on others? According to legends, on October 10, 663, people from all over the world sealed the Oracle of the Goddess of Salvation, and the world shuddered at the news of the fall of the City of Ashes. The Age of Peace came to an end and was replaced by an age of courage and strength. In the free city of Frere at the Adventurers Guild training ground, Red practiced using V/. He thought it wasn't like that. That Rex's art was somehow different from ordinary art. That art was a God-given gift. He had been taught that it was automatically activated by drawing acquired techniques in his mind and adding magic to weapons. He thought that from the way Rex was moving. He thought he had put a bunch of magic into his weapon and was swinging it around at will. So he should just put more magic into his weapon and follow his path of art. He figured then he wouldn't have to rely on the gifts of the gods. Red dropped his sword and fell to the ground. He thought that it was rather difficult to wield a weapon with so much magic in it. But he knew that Rex had managed to string together a series of intricate strikes. He said that first of all, Rex is incredible. From behind the door, Rex said it was him, and he needed a little help and asked if Red could open the door. Thoth said what kind of people and asked what made him come at such a late hour. Rex hesitated. He said he needed money. Red was surprised. Rex asked if Hero would borrow a little money and said that it was okay, that it was just money and very soon he would pay him back 3 times as much, that he would pay him back 10-fold, if he wanted even 100-fold. Red asked him to wait. He said that Rex isn't a rank adventurer and Rex must have more money than him and asked what the hell happened to him. Thoth replied that it's a long story. Red said he wouldn't sleep until he told it to him. Rex said it happened a few hours ago. He was walking around town. He was thinking about dying in a car accident, dying after reincarnation, coming back from the dead, and that to tell the truth, it had been a lousy day, and how tired he was of walking a tightrope. He decided that from now on he would proceed with caution and not take any risks, but for now he needed to think about his future plans. He saw a casino in front of him and was pleasantly surprised. He wondered if this was the place. Rex thought it was a very rare establishment that appeared randomly on the outskirts of some city. It was the Casino of the Gods. The forum said that if you find it early on, just do your best. Rex thought that was just fine. He knew that you could certainly play with what you had, but the more initial money you could put in, the better. He decided that items, gear, he would sell whatever he could. He was greeted at the entrance by a girl in a bunny costume. She welcomed Rex to guard Lilim and told him that this was a world of dreams and desires where he, Circula, would be his guide. He thought it was pretty cozy. The girl said that if he wanted, she could show him how to play in the casino. Rex hesitated. Circula showed the token machine and said that here you could buy tokens and use them to play. She explained that the rate for each token was different. 1 copper token for 1 won, 1 gold token for 1 million won. She also showed the prize machine and said that you can exchange your tokens back for money. So you will have to use this machine to exchange your tokens for prizes, and they are very proud of all their prizes. She said to be careful because all the prizes won here cannot be sold in the store. The girl said that there are 4 kinds of games here, such as poker, roulette, slots, and blackjack, all designed to be played alone. She asked if the rules needed to be explained. Rex asked if he could do it later. Circula agreed and said that would be the end of it then. She added that to prevent cheating, they have a policy of no magic, tricks, or items, so she asked to be careful. She wished Rex a good time. He smiled. He decided to look at the prizes first, assuming they were a pile of ordinary junk. Rex saw the steel royal sword, the ring of the fallen star, the triangular hat, and the barrier ring. He wondered if it was too good. He saw a ring of power, an ancient sword, and a goblin cleaver. Rex was terribly surprised, realizing that this was a treasure trove of very rare items. At this time, Circula was looking at him. She thought it was a pathetic sight, the lowest layer trying to pass itself off as the top. Rex bought quite a lot of tokens. A girl noticed this and approached him. She said that if he was going to play roulette, when he put down the tokens and touched the crystal, the roulette would start automatically. She thought it was roulette that would send him to heaven. Circula said that roulette is a game where you have to throw a ball into a disc of numbers called a wheel and see where it lands. She said that all Rex needs to know is to predict in advance what number the ball will fall on and put a token on the table with the number he wants to bet on. He can bet on the exact number, such as 1 or 2, or an even or odd number. Rex decided to bet 1 copper token on an even number. He started the roulette wheel. It spun. 11, an odd number, fell out. The circlet said that if he guessed an even or odd number, he would get twice as many tokens as he had bet. And if he guessed the numbers correctly, each of the tokens would come back 36 times what he had bet. The girl thought that from that moment on, he bet 1 copper token on an even number 7 times in a row. Eventually, odd, even, odd. She said it was excellent, 3 wins in a row, and no wonder, for luck favors the best adventurers. She thought about how he's such a doe-eyed darling that he doesn't even know it's a trick, and if a visitor bets a small number of tokens, the probability of success is 80% because of the deception. It's done to spur their desire to bet more. This is what the casino game is like. It sucks the life juices out of people 1 drop at a time with each game played. Circula thought that the life energy drained from casino visitors was her sustenance and her favorite pastime. Rex put the tokens on even, and at the last moment moved them to the other side. The girl saw that he had just activated the roulette wheel and then moved the tokens at the last minute. She thought it wasn't exactly cheating, but it wasn't good behavior. Rex wanted to address Circula. She beat him to it and sweetly asked what he wanted to say. Toth apologized and said she was distracting him. He asked her to give him some space. She said she could see he was having a hard time and stepped back, wanting to be entertained. She wondered if he might have noticed something. She knew there was a trick to the roulette wheel. She noticed that something seemed strange to her from the beginning. He was making small bets to see what would happen. But he was concerned about something. Circula thought it would make sense if there were cheats at the table with him. The girl wondered if this man noticed that something was wrong with the wheel and decided to unravel it with tokens of greater value. She was tense. The girl thought how wonderful it was. Circula thought how wonderful it was. She watched Rex play with a smile. She mentally apologized that she had underestimated him, that he thought he had surpassed her and was more cunning. The girl thought she had to admit he deserved credit for figuring out the roulette secret, the only one of all the people who had been here. She thought her casino was designed for people like him to know the taste of desperation. This casino trick is a two-step trick. The moment the player realizes that a small bet is only draining his vitality and decides to play big, the trick is turned upside down. If a cell is bet 1 gold token or more, repulsion magic is applied to it, and the ball will never hit that cell. Circula noticed Rex looking at the gold tokens. She mentally rushed him. When he made the bet, she wanted him to play faster. Rex started the roulette wheel, and the girl thought happily that this was it. She was very surprised. It seemed to her that he had just bet a gold token. She became dizzy. She felt sick and didn't realize what was happening. The girl thought it was as if something was being sucked out of her. She understood everything. Circula thought he had put gold tokens on even and odd, one well each. With this choice of bets, one cannot get anything regardless of whether the ball falls on an even or odd number. On the contrary, if it falls on 0, which is neither even nor odd, the bet will not play. The girl thought it couldn't be. If you bet a gold token, the ball will never fall where the bet was placed. Therefore, if you bet on both even and odd numbers, the ball will always fall into cell 0, which is part of neither. The deception is activated the moment the roulette wheel comes into motion. Thus, it is possible to drop tokens into a cell with a value of 0 between the time the machine turns on and when the bet is collected. In this case, the ball will always hit the 0 cell, and the player will win 36 times the amount of the bet. Circula didn't realize how she was outplayed. After all, she had killed everyone who knew about this trick. She is the only one in this world who knows how it works. She wondered if it could be wrong, and if there were diabolical ways of gaining knowledge that should not have been known. Rex thought about how he was sorry that things didn't work out the way Circula planned, but he knows every inch of this casino, and also that she is a demon who kills adventurers who come to the casino. All because he read the devil's book that shows the truth of this world. It is a forbidden book of knowledge that cannot be obtained. Rex read the thick manuscript with the game's setting data that came with the pre-order. Circula knew that this was due to a lack of magical power caused by the creation of a large number of tokens. The prizes in the casino are also generated using her magic power. She didn't know what would happen to her if he made her give out the reward now. She shouted to Rex, asking him to wait, to stop, that she shouldn't. She said she didn't want to die. Circula screamed and took the form of a demon. She figured that if this man attacked her in response to her demonic form, she could throw him out of the casino for breaking the rules. She yelled angrily. She knew that if he ignored her and traded her winnings, she would lose. Rex looked tense. If he attacked, the demon would win. Circula yelled at him and mentally rushed him to attack. Rex said that she looked relatively good and maybe he could go a little farther. She was shocked. She thought she was wrong and he was third-rate. The demon thought he was a monster. Rex walked out of the casino and said he had won. He had acquired a steel royal sword, a ring of fallen star, a triangular hat, a barrier ring, a ring of power, and an ancient sword. Rex was satisfied. He looked at his empty sack and realized that he had forgotten something. Red asked if he wanted to say that he had won a lot of money at the casino, but got carried away and spent all he had on prizes, and now he had not a penny left. Rex replied that generally speaking, somehow. He asked Red again what he had decided, but he slammed the door. Ever since Rex came to this world, he has gotten to know it much better. The first thing he can say for sure is that this world repeats the events from Blade and Dare. He managed to save Rex's sister, Lacilia. At the moment, she was lying on the ground and dying. The events from the game are recreated almost completely. First of all, the Japanese language is used here, and there are some modern goods, services, and items. As he was dying, he heard someone's voice. He thought, even if he did a good deed by saving a girl he didn't know, is it possible that the whole world was created just for him? He decided that it was useless for him to think about it. After that, he opened the diary. Rex wondered what he should do now. It wasn't that he didn't want to be in this world, but he had a lot of unfinished business left there. In his diary, he wrote in his journal, go back to his world. But now he is Rex. In the Kyo world he loves so much, he wants to live his life as Rex. He crossed out the entry to return to his world and wrote a new task, to live in this world. He said that above all, the main goal is to survive for 3 years of the game. If an ordinary player, Rex, dies 100% of the time, he survived the starting event, so he thinks he has passed that barrier, but he couldn't be too sure. Besides, if the evil god came back to life anyway, the world wouldn't be safe, so it's practically a complete purge. Rex thought that in order to achieve this goal, he would need. The first thing is to find the protagonist. The protagonist is the most important character in the game. It is not only necessary, but also very important in terms of the game in Red's pack he met. There was no protagonist. The worst thing that can happen is that there isn't a single hero in the world. The second thing is to explore the world. Find out what the world is like and how it differs from the game. What you can do in the game and what you can't do in this world. What you can't do in the game but can do in this world. All of those things can be an advantage to Rex. Third is to complete the various events. In Kyo, there are events called fatal events. This is an event in which a certain character will die if you make the wrong choices or leave them unattended. There is also a similar event called historical crossroads. If the wrong choice is made here, the world will be thrown into chaos. The fourth thing is to build up your strength. Rex said that this is it, and first he needs to recall all the knowledge of the game. He thought he had written something terrible. He thought that if it was a comic book or something, it would be captured by the enemy in the second half of the story and cause Rex a lot of trouble. He said he had to be careful that no one saw him. Lucilia came into the room and turned to her older brother. He said that she was awake. The girl came close to him and called her brother Rex. She saw the entries in the diary. Lucilia pointed a sword at Rex and asked who he was. The man asked what she was all of a sudden. The girl said not to fool around. She said he thought as if she would not distinguish her own brother from a fake. Rex calmed down. He told Lucilia that he would tell her the horrible story, but asked if she would want to hear it. The girl said she was ready. He agreed and said he would then tell her everything. He said that for starters, he was not the Rex Turing she knew, that he was born in another world. Lucilia said she understood. Rex asked if she thought he was deceiving her. She replied that it was a fairly predictable reaction. All the lies will be exposed when the church passes judgment. Sweat why people in this world know that lies made up hastily will prove meaningless. She asked if he really didn't know anything about Rex. Toth asked what she meant. Lucilia said that it had been 10 years since she had last seen him. Rex was surprised. She said that 10 years ago, her brother suddenly dropped everything and left home to become an adventurer. At that time, it was quite hard because of the hustle and bustle around. She said that when the demons attacked, all she knew was that her brother was back in town. Rex was very surprised and asked what was up when she said she could tell the difference between her brother and a fake. The girl replied that of course she was bluffing, but it seemed that someone had fallen for it. She said that's why she doesn't know what to think when someone tells her that someone else is inside her brother because she doesn't know him either. Rex huffed. Lucilia asked to ask him about one more thing that Rex had done in the history of his world. Rex gathered his thoughts. He said that after the protagonist reached a certain level, Rex would leave him with the words that he still had unfinished business. From then on, the protagonist would never see him again. He wanted to add something else. The girl asked what. Rex said that if you go to the ruined city of ashes, in its depths you can find dead bodies dressed in black. Lucilia said that perhaps Rex meant the return of the city of ashes or something like that. She said it was clear to her. There were 2 bottles on the table. She drank one of them. The girl said it was all right and it was not poisoned. Rex agreed and drank the second bottle. Lucilia said that it was understandable and it was holy water. She had heard that some demons could possess people. Rex looked at her in surprise. The girl said it was just to be on the safe side, and she also recognized that he was not very careful. She said she had made up her mind. Lucilia said she would follow Rex. He choked up. She said that whoever he was, this body belonged to her brother and she could not leave him. And the Turing clan was a warrior clan, and she would be able to help him in battle. Rex said to wait, and that it was hard to talk about battles at least without knowing how strong she was. He suggested starting at her level, though he decided he wanted her to show him her status window first, and then they would talk about the future. Lucilia asked what a status window was. Rex was very surprised. He thought that the status window was probably the most important factor of the Kyo, but did the people of this world not know what status was? He used identification. Looking in the mirror, he thought that if he used evaluation, he could see his status window, and Rex is pretty weak. A normal adventurer in the world of Kyo gets 4 characteristic points per level. So, at level 50, the average characteristic points should be 200. But at the time of level 1, the player already has 20 characteristic points, while Rex has 20 less. 4 is the standard number of points gained by normal adventurers, though they are usually not evenly distributed, such as 6 to strength but 2 to magic. Even if the total value is the same, a class character with 300 strength and 100 magic will be much stronger than a normal character with 200 strength and magic. Most of the characters the game hinges on have above average stats, as they should be. This difference becomes more noticeable late in the game. This is because in Kyo you can switch between different classes, but only if you have the proper skills. The higher the class, the higher the requirements, but the greater the benefit as you can use more powerful techniques. Therefore, the more characteristics one has, the stronger one can become, and with low characteristics one falls further and further behind. Lucilia asked Rex if he was alright, if he wasn't feeling well. She said she thought he needed to rest. Rex replied that he was fine. He thought the main issue was the status of Lucilia. A character's growth factor is an unchangeable basis of this world. Generally, the initial characteristic value at level 1 is equal to 6 times the growth factor. Then the average characteristic value will be 18. In other words, if the factor is 3, one can give good support in a patty. But if it's less than that, then unfortunately, it's better to keep her out of the fray. Rex looked at Lucilia and used identification. She had pretty good characteristics in level 1. Rex was greatly surprised. He woke up thinking about the first one. He thought he saw a status that shocked him so much that he fainted. Lucilia came into the room and noticed that he was awake. The girl said that she had heard from the innkeepers that Rex had defeated the demon the day before yesterday while protecting the squad from the newcomers, even though he was badly wounded. She said she was sure he was very tired. Lucilia handed him some egg porridge and wished him a pleasant appetite. Rex thanked. He said it was delicious. He asked if Lucilia had made it. She replied that it was only a consolation prize. She also thanked him for his help. Rex thought he was pathetic. He thought that he knew from the beginning that Rex was weak and he should change his way of thinking. He didn't always know how to treat Kyo in terms of the game. He thought he was a hero even though he said he wasn't. In this game, the player is the hero saving the world, and he should take the initiative to destroy his enemies. But that is not the role Rex should play now. He decided that he should think of this world as a simulation game. Rex was going to train a group of people who could defeat the demons, raise others in their place, and conquer this world. He thought that was the best choice he could make now. He thought that the answer to his last question was probably right here. Rex mentally told Lucilia that he was glad to see her here and turned to her. He said he needed her help and asked if she would fight alongside him. The girl smiled. She said that this sword was at his service. Later, the heroes were walking in the mountains. Lucilia asked if Rex wanted to know why she was so strong for her level and said that then she felt it was necessary to tell him about the House of the Terrain. She said that the Terrain had served the rulers of the City of Ashes for generations, acting as royal guards and swordsmen, and had done so until the demons attacked the City of Ashes. She said that the Terrans use their speed and wind magic in battle. In truth, she only recently got her license, so she thinks the guild is still intact. Rex asked what kind of license. The girl replied that she still has a lot of work to do, but now she is part of the Sword of Terrain, and now she can proudly call herself an Imperial Swordsman. Rex didn't understand what she meant by Imperial Swordsman. He realized that if one recalled Lucilia's status, an Imperial Swordsman was the highest class of swordsman. He was very surprised and thought that it couldn't be. He realized that Lucilia is a character that was supposed to die in an event, not even a battle scene, which is why she was created as a character who didn't gain the maximum level without deciding her class. He thought that, however, in this situation, it was probably assumed that Lucilia would inherit the skills of House Terrain. He didn't know what would happen if someone decided to change her class to Imperial Swordsman. He thought that, of course, the default characteristics didn't meet the requirements to become an Imperial Swordsman, unless there was a glitch in the program and the value of Lucilia's characteristics were raised to the lower limit of Imperial Swordsman. The strongest level 1 character is created. Rex thought, this is what it's all about, and oh, those Kyo developers. Rex thought that there was nothing better than being strong like Lucilia, who was left out of the game. In this world, he wanted to help those he couldn't help in the game and call them to his team. Rex thought that maybe he could create the strongest army of all. When they reached Wild Meadows, Lucilia said that they were at the location. She suggested that they get down to business. She said she was attacking and summoned the wind. The girl easily chopped the goblin in half. She walked further away holding her sword. Rex asked if she was alright and wanted to say something about killing the humanoid. She replied that she knew it wasn't the right thing to say after killing all those creatures, but inside she was excited. Lucilia said that the Sword of House Terrain grows strong with its master, so hunting non-demons was forbidden. She said that so what, she feels that her wish has been fulfilled. The girl apologized and said that she seemed to have gotten a little carried away. Rex replied that it was okay. He suggested that she be more collected next time. She agreed. The purpose of this contrivance is to look at the rate of growth of Lucilia as she increases her level. For example, Rex, all his growth rates are 4, so there is no difference in the cost of his abilities each time he level up. Rex thought that no matter how high her starting stats were, if her level gain was low, she would eventually have a hard time keeping up with the battle. At this time, the girl was killing monsters one after another. She said that it was a level increase. Rex said that he could watch then. Lucilia said to be so kind. Rex mentally pleaded, put aside his envy, and prayed with a pure heart that there would be a number 4 if possible, or even 3. He began to identify. He saw that Lucilia's growth factor was very large. He was exceeding that figure of Rex's, so he was surprised. The girl asked how it went. Rex looked dejected and moaned. Lucilia interjected. Rex tearfully said that he was going to create the strongest army. He thought that stats and Kyo were a pretty serious thing. The city was lively. Rex looked at the characteristics of the people passing by. He thought it was so comforting to see someone weaker than himself. Lucilia said he seemed to be in a good mood and asked what he was doing. He was trying to figure out if his ability to identify was special. Rex realized that it seems that people in this world use their own gut feeling as identification to determine the strength of the enemy rather than numerical values. He said he noticed something. He pointed to that guy in the wizard's robe. Rex said his characteristics looked like this and drew them in his notebook. He thought that the wizard's abilities required a lot of magic and concentration, but the propensity of his stats were almost the opposite. He thought that the characteristics of adventurers in this world are determined randomly. Because of this, many characters have accidents. Rex said that in this world, size and appearance are not directly related to characteristics. Lucilia replied that she understood. Rex noticed a big guy in the crowd and decided to make an example of him by looking at the characteristics. He thought that this guy would grow into something incredible. I mean, he's 16 levels below Rex, and he's already so good. He was sure that that one was one of the most famous rank adventurers in the city, and his name sounded so powerful without any doubt. He posed a question to Lucilia. Rex said that this is what they know. He said that people in this world weren't very good at developing characteristics because they had trained without accurate data on their hands. But with his advice, they would definitely become stronger. He thought there was something else. He was still mostly weak. Compared to other adventurers, Rex's characteristics were too small. A character's height is basically determined by the sum of the base value and the class correction. In other words, if you remove the class correction from the growth factor, you can calculate a person's base values. In the game, the fortune teller rated a person's potential on a 6-point scale, i.e., terrible, bad, normal, good, great, genius. For example, according to this evaluation, without the correction of the Imperial Swordsman class, Lucilia's growth factor is clearly above normal. On the other hand, The swordsman Rex, a lone adventurer who crossed the world with a single sword, is only half as good as a normal adventurer. The first thing Rex didn't realize was that his highest characteristic as a swordsman is magic power, which is the most unnecessary for a swordsman. He didn't realize wasn't the real Rex a god. With such stats, he had managed to rise to a rank adventurer. But now he had a plan. He thought there were two ways to pump himself up: make friends or concentrate on himself. He was a little torn between the two options, but with such a clear set of data, he came to a conclusion. He decided that in the end, it no longer made sense to train Rex in the current situation. He wondered if he had decided to give up this venture for good. He decided to start pumping Rex from scratch. He thought that normally it would be wise to abandon such a venture here and now, but he is a gamer and everything inside him is screaming. He thought it would be really cool to train this helpless character to become a real warrior. Rex knows one event where it would be possible to reset his stats, although the difficulty is very high, so he needs to start by building the best army possible. He wanted to save the world from destruction and make the future a little less sad. Rex enthusiastically decided to do this, and so his development would depend entirely on himself. The men called out to Rex. He saw the boys, the very same team. He asked if they wanted him to be their mentor. The young man was in a hurry and thought he didn't have much time. He walked into the auditorium and was surprised at how many people were there. The seminar was arranged by a rank adventurer who came to the guild reception. He said that he would like to teach the young adventurers some secrets and asked if he could take over one of the classrooms. That's how it all started. He was one of the best adventurers in the city, an immortal man who, despite being mortally wounded, defeated a representative of a powerful demon race with a lion's share of success. He surprisingly said that because he just wanted to give some people a little advice, but it seems that they have an unexpected addition, so they will start slowly. He said that the story he was going to tell them was how to become a stronger adventurer, and there were a lot of people involved in creating it. He asked if they could, to share his story with as many people as possible. He asked if they knew what was the most important thing to becoming a first-class adventurer. One of the boys answered that strength. The teacher said that was not that wrong, but it was not quite what he meant. He said the most important thing to become a great adventurer is to never give up. He said that they would ask if that was all there was to it, but as long as they were alive, they could do it over and over again. The teacher said that everyone has potential. He said that no matter how bad they get, they will always have that experience in them. So there is no wrong path for an adventurer. Only those who keep moving forward even when they are mocked will become first class. The teacher said that he got a little carried away and he was sure they were bored with all this psychology, so he was going to talk about something more practical. He said that they were said to have 6 powers by the blessing of God. He wrote on the blackboard about strength, fortitude, agility, magic, spirit, and concentration, and said, "This is what it is." The young man listening to this thought that he had always known that growth made them stronger, but he had never known what powers had what effect. That is what it means to be an adventurer of a rank. The teacher said that they say the direction of these 6 powers is determined by the person, but in fact the race is strongly influenced. For example, dwarves are strong and elves are good at magic. He said that most of them are a mixture of several races, but everyone knows to a certain extent what abilities they have based on what blood flows in their veins. He asked the boys to calm down and let him now tell them about his abilities. The teacher said they were all equally important and asked if they thought they didn't need magic because they were warriors or that they didn't need strength because they were wizards. He said that this is a great misconception, and a warrior needs magic to use his arts, and a wizard needs strength to wear sturdy equipment. He said that however it is also true that having all-round abilities does not make someone the best. He asked, so what the hell are they supposed to do about it? The teacher explained that it was about having their own unique strengths, so they should consciously develop one of those characteristics to build their strengths. He said that if they didn't know what to prioritize over, he would recommend agility. The young man was very surprised. The teacher said that he understood why they were so surprised, and that of course it would be more effective and cool if they increased their strength and magic rather than agility. He explained that agility is very versatile. If they have twice as much agility, they can hit twice as many enemies and use twice as much magic. Also, they can run away the fastest when they get in trouble, and be the first to come to the aid of their friends when they are in danger. Anyway, it will never fail in any situation. The boy thought that the teacher was right, and if one only focused on attack power and magic, there wouldn't be time to use them. The teacher said that the ability to move faster than the opponent wasn't useless in any situation, although he only realized it now, and he wasn't very fast either. He said that now that they had sorted all this out, they would talk about equipment. That guy marveled at the gear. The teacher said that there was a story about two swordsmen who became adventurers around the same time. They were both equally good and had several level ups before they became adventurers, but there was only one difference. He said that one was poor and had a worn-out iron sword. The other was rich and had a brand new sword made of mithril, and they encountered in a dungeon and fought the same monster. The teacher invited the students to guess what happened. He said that the mithril sword bounced off the monsters, and only the iron sword could defeat them. The teacher said that, of course, it couldn't be said that the mithril sword was defective, but strong weapons require corresponding strength, and there was no point in spending a lot of money on something that didn't suit them. He said he thought the adventurer's knowledge had spread a bit, and now everyone wore the same gear. Of course, this is all good because the adventurer is not a slave to his gear. The teacher said that whether a weapon is weak or strong depends only on the adventurer. And if someone is a really strong adventurer, shouldn't he try to win with a weapon more suited to him? The teacher said that now that he had said all this, they might or might not take his word for it. But he believed in the freedom of the adventurer. And as he had said at the beginning, growth was the word that kept them going. He said that is why he says don't look for shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to becoming stronger, by trial and error, by falling and failing. He suggested to think about it and make mistakes over and over again and never give up. He said if they still can't handle it, then come to him. He said that it was because he was in a rank adventurer, Immortal Vertane. Rex saw the boys. He asked if they wanted him to be their mentor. Rex found himself in the Adventurers Guild. He walked up to the counter. Later, the whole team set up in the Adventurers Guild training area. The team asked if such things should be held in a lecture room or something. Rex said that he had heard from the administrator that a famous adventurer was speaking in the lecture room, recruiting newcomers. Red said that if he was going to give them a lecture, maybe then he could tell the rest of the newcomers as well. Rex replied that unfortunately that would never happen, and above all, what he was about to tell them would not make their adventures any more fun. He said that they were all cursed. The team lined up in a line. He asked, first, what they thought was the most important thing for becoming a first-class adventurer. Red replied that fortitude and never letting up. Rex laughed. Red tensed. Rex said to let them decide for themselves what they think is paramount, but he thinks it's efficiency. Red interjected. Rex said they say if someone is 10 times worse than others, they should work 10 times harder. He said that by that logic, they could never beat the guy who works 3 hours a day because life is finite and there are only 24 hours in a day. Red wanted to object. Rex said that was enough of an introduction and suggested we get to the point. He said that, as they know, defeating demons makes them grow, increasing their abilities. He said that this is what those abilities are, pointing to the entries in the notebook. Each of these abilities is said to correspond to a certain race, but they are irrelevant to the ordinary adventurer. There are gnome that are too weak and elves that are bad at magic. He said that the main point here is that if you equalize the scores of these 6 important abilities, they will become like an ordinary person and asked which is more important. Rex said it was a matter of cutting off unnecessary abilities. Nuku asked to wait and said that because warriors need magic to use their arts and wizards need strength to wear sturdy equipment, there are no unnecessary abilities. Rex replied that she was right, and there is no such thing as an unnecessary ability. He said that there are certain abilities that are less effective. The first ability that he thinks should be eliminated is agility. Red was very surprised and asked if dexterity wasn't an important ability and said that he couldn't just eliminate it first. Rex said that indeed, dexterity is useful in all cases, which is why younger adventurers tend to focus on dexterity, but therein lies the trap. Red didn't understand what the trap was. Rex said that agility is very effective, but it reaches a ceiling quickly. He explained that the increase in agility is only noticeable up to 100. After 100 this effect is obviously halved, and above 150 it is practically useless, so if they are looking to the future, They should not overdo agility and prioritize other abilities, as they are the ones that will ultimately make them stronger. He said that the next thing to remember is the choice of profession and equipment. He gave the example of Red and asked if he had a choice between an iron sword, a mithril sword, and an orichalcum sword. Which one does he think would be better for him? Red replied that, of course, the orichalcum one. Nuku disagreed and said that in this case, the iron sword would be the best choice. Rex asked why that would be. She replied that powerful equipment requires corresponding abilities, so mithril or orichalcum equipment doesn't match their abilities yet. Rex said that what Nuku says is true, but this time, Red turned out to be right. He said that the book said that an iron sword is stronger than a mithril sword when used by beginners, and it is true that a mithril sword is weaker than an iron sword when it is in the hands of beginners. He said that didn't mean they were limited in their choice of equipment. Nuku was very surprised. Rex said that the weapon has a fixed attack power, which does not change no matter who uses it, and a variable attack power, which works the other way around, changing depending on the strength of the wielder. Rex said that an iron sword is sometimes stronger than a mithril sword when in the hands of novices because an iron sword has more of a fixed attack power and a mithril sword has a variable attack power. He said that on the other hand, when a person levels up and becomes stronger, he may find that his mithril sword is stronger than his orichalc sword, and if he is looking for a new sword, there are some things to pay attention to. Rex said that choosing gear is the most important factor for an adventurer to become stronger, so he said not to compromise on unreasonable reasons for not being strong enough, and if they can't handle it, they should consider why. He said he thinks an adventurer should be greedy and strive to better themselves. Red said that he seems to be beginning to understand what the old man means and that they, as adventurers, grow. He said it's like a little entertainment. Rex said he thought they had misunderstood things and asked if that was so. He said it is better to have high abilities than low ones, even if they are not used. He said, they say, if it's a little inefficient to level up a little, just raise it a little more and you'll be fine and blah, blah, blah. Rex explained that leveling up is a system created by the gods, with strict rules. First, by defeating monsters they gain experience, and the higher the level, the harder it is to level up. He suggested to imagine that they are facing a monster so strong that they can barely defeat it. He said that if their level was lower than his, defeating him would raise their level and make them even stronger, and the next time they met him they could destroy him with their strength. He asked, but what if their level is higher than the monster? He said that by killing demons of their level, they would begin to gain less experience, so all their efforts to defeat the enemy would be in vain. He asked if they understood and said that when an adventurer couldn't defeat a monster of even his level, he was finished. Rex said not to be so naive as to dare to say that it's not something they are good at. But that's okay, because they have risen a notch higher. He said that with each misstep they took, the next level became more and more distant, and defeating the enemy became more difficult, and the amount of experience needed became more and more. He said that some adventurer humming to himself would need to slay 10 demons, and they, covered in blood and mud, would have to hunt 100 of them. Rex said that they are not only fighting the demons in front of them, they are always being pursued by their perfect selves, which is much scarier. Rex asked to be allowed to make them realize that they should give up the illusion that adventurers are free to level up. They should never stop trying to find shortcuts and run down them to get stronger. They should only do what is in their power and not make mistakes. He said to think about it and not make a single mistake and never compromise. Rex said that still, when they are tempted to take the easy path, they should remember something. He said that the Orang Adventurer Rex terrain would follow the boys. The team sat with drooping heads. Rex thought he'd gone a little overboard with the intimidation, but he needed to let them know that the world of Kyo wasn't as simple as it seemed. When he first started playing Kyo, he didn't have any information about the game and just had fun collecting characters, leveling up, and going through the early stages. He got stuck in the middle of the walkthrough. This was because the developers had set a trap to adjust the difficulty of the game. The experience system works in such a way that the higher the ability total, the more experience needed to reach the next level. If a player's level is higher than the opponent's, he will get much less experience when he kills him. The first monsters are weak and can be defeated almost effortlessly. Characters with low growth factor grow much faster. But from the middle of the game, when the enemies become stronger, it's not so easy anymore. The characters with low growth factor, who constantly increase their level, will not be able to keep up with the inflation of enemy abilities, and in the end, the player will be stuck in a situation where he cannot even resist monsters of his level and will not be able to gain any experience. On the other hand, the opposite is also true. A character whose abilities are high relative to their level, i.e., whose growth factor is high, in the early stages of the game, because of the experience required to level up, may be the last to level up. But if the player takes the time to develop their abilities, they will easily overtake those who are held back by inflation. Eventually, they will become the ones to be looked up to. Rex figured that in this world, they didn't even have a concept of status as a number. He asked the team if they had already decided what their roles would be. Red said that he always wanted to be the hero that defeats his enemies with a sword. Nuku said that she was never known for her physical fitness, so she was thinking of a role involving magic. Plana said that she would just like to be useful. Mana said she didn't think she could wield a sword or anything else, so she decided to stay in the rear and continue to support the others with her healing magic. Rex thought that everyone had their own reasons and shouldn't expect too much from them. It's not that it's a bad thing, but if by characteristics they aren't suited for these roles, then they should have thought twice. Rex said he was now going to find out their status and their base value by writing them down here. He said that when he called the name, they could come up and get them. He said that status is a numerical measure of their ability, and that will be the basis for their future plans. He said that Red would go first. He agreed. Rex thought that the initial value of the characteristics at level 1 was equal to 6 times the growth factor. Red had already managed to increase his level 3 times, from level 1 to level 4. So at level 4 he had characteristics equal to 10 times the growth factor. So if you work backwards and divide these values by 9, you can get the growth factor. Rex thought that by using the values of the class adjusted characteristic values, based on the lower classes to which Red and his friends are attached, then one could subtract those values from the growth factor and get an idea of their base value. Red took a sheet of paper with his ratios and said it was his. Rex thought about the fact that he was 2 points behind Lucilia, but his total number of stats was 22, which was 4 more than the average of 18. Although he was a little too balanced, the high stats of strength, resilience of spirit made him perfect for a warrior. Rex didn't understand why he had everything in units. Nuku was next. She was worried. She said it was her worksheet and began to study. Rex thought her only flaw was her low concentration level, but that could be compensated for. He thought that if a player was a wizard, he was only as good as his magic. He said that Mana would be next. She came up. The girl began to study her sheet. Rex thought that she was only 1 level behind the others because of the healer class, but she had such high scores. He thought that he would like to see in dexterity and concentration not 4, but at least 3 points to pump healing magic, but he figured they would somehow get over it. Red asked what the team thought of this strength score. Nuku said it was pretty bad to have a low spirit score and asked what Mana's was. Watching them, Rex thought that he missed moments like this. He remembered that he used to sit in front of the TV and play games, worrying about the same things. He wanted to call for the next one, but Plana came up on her own and said it was her. She began to study the sheet. Rex didn't understand what was wrong with them or if they were using cheats. Plana's scout class was just perfect for a bow, especially considering that people with genius quality in the world of Kaio were quite rare. She stepped close to Rex and asked if she could be of any help. The man was embarrassed. He said that he would tell them everything now. Rex said he had looked into their statuses and base value, and the result was this. He said they had all the makings of a first-class adventurer, or even more. He thought that these were promising values compared to his. He said that nevertheless, they would never be as good as real heroes, and the system chooses a hero who uses his privilege and status to defeat everyone else. Rex said that a hero has a total of 25 base points that no one else can match, although their distribution varies from character to character. He told the boys that he would make them a better team. He thought that of course they are not as good as the hero, so what if they are not heroes, but he will make them stronger than the heroes? Then it is much more interesting for him as a player. He asked if they didn't hear him say he would make their team the best in the world. Rex said he would ask again if they would follow him or run away with their tails tucked. Red said he was going to pump himself up to the max. Mana said she would do her best. Nuku said that if she turned down the opportunity, she would regret it for the rest of her life afterward. Plana said that, of course. Rex said he would give the first instruction to all of them. He said there would be no fighting for the next month. The whole crew was puzzled. The team was at the Adventurers Guild training ground. Rex told them not to slow down, and that when they were in trouble their legs were their salvation. It had been a week since he started training Red and his friends. Nuku was screaming that they wouldn't let him down. Rex trained them in the city to improve their abilities. Therefore, Rex decided that fighting was off limits for them. Vertaine shouted that even if the students don't grow by defeating demons, they can still increase their abilities by training to fight them. They might not be good at something, but the training is the same for everyone, and even if they don't succeed all at once, the spirit and confidence they gain will help them in times of need. Rex wanted the man to be quiet. Worthine asked if they were doing the same thing, weren't they? Rex apologized and said he didn't want a complete stranger asking if he was doing the same thing he was. Toph laughed and said that it had been a long time since they'd talked to him like that. He gave Rex a friendly reminder that everyone had been talking about him for a long time. He said that Rex was a mediocrity, that by his teaching he was wasting the talent of promising and hopeful rookies. He said that sometimes there are adventurers who are so afraid of adventure that they prepare for it too thoroughly, and usually those who prepare hard to grow. But for some reason they grow slowly and end up being a burden. But the brave and courageous grow faster. Rex thought that was the path he had taken in his first failed attempt. Worthine said that he himself had recently started training a group of boys and knew what it was like to be overprotective of those he had just met. But if Rex dared to ruin the young boy's chances of success because of his ego, he would not forgive him. He said that Rex had heard him, and it was up to him to make the most of it. Rex thought, after all, who is this passing warrior? Nuku said he was Mr. Wertaine, an Orang adventurer, leader of one of the best teams in the city. She said that he was once surrounded by countless hordes of demons, and although he was mortally wounded, he managed to defeat them all. After that, he was nicknamed Immortal Vertaine. Rex said that he thought he had seen him before in the city. Nuku asked if they could one day become as strong as him. Rex replied that they would not. Nuku sadly replied that he was right. Rex said that it was because they would be much stronger than him. Nuku said that he is an Orang. Rex said that in their days, whether someone is a veteran or a newcomer matters little, and this world is different from the world before the prophecy of the goddess savior. The maximum length of the game is 3 years, a total of 3 years. Why did the heroes of the game manage to compete with the longest-lived adventurers in the world of Kyo? The answer is in blessings and demonic activity. Before the prophecy, the demons that were supposed to be the source of their growth had stopped multiplying since the evil god had disappeared. But now that the evil gods and the savior goddess had returned and demon activity had increased, the rate of adventurers remaining was several times higher than before, maybe even dozens of times higher. Rex said that if the team was still worried about it, he asked them to give him some time, 1 year, or even 6 months. He said that in just some 6 months, he would make them stronger than this man. The girls were encouraged. They said they would do their best. Rex smiled. Plana and Rex were in the meditation hall of the Adventurers Guild. Rex sat silently. Suddenly, Plana was right in his face, which he was startled. She said it was time for a break. He apologized. She looked at him silently. He asked if Plana had ever wondered if there was something wrong with what he said. He said he had forbidden her to fight for a month, suggested she change her class to wizard, which was the opposite of what she was, and now he had ordered her to meditate. He asked why and why. Plana replied that if training is more effective when one is weak, then he should train until N is ready to fight. If the effectiveness of his training depends on his abilities, then it is only natural that he should change class when she suits him. She asked what then could be the doubt. Plana told Rex that he should be more confident, no matter what books she read, what people she asked. No one had ever given her advice like his. She said they were very lucky to have gotten the best leader. Rex thought that such unusual training would never be understood by the people of this world, but Plan believed in him. He apologized to her for underestimating her. He said he was glad he had begun to train her and her friends. Rex said he had to go to Red's. Plana asked him to wait. She said that the truth was that sometimes she didn't understand everything, but she just wanted to believe in him because he had risked his life to save her. Rex thought it was true that he had fought the fatal demons to the death to save Plana and the others. But he thought that Plana didn't see the fight because he was calling for help at the time. Then Plana was grateful that he escorted them. He felt that he had disproportionate expectations and gratitude. He thought his motivation only grew from this. Rex arrived at the training ground of the Adventurers Guild. Red used V/. He was frustrated that Lacilia was ahead of him. She used V/, curved kick, and cross-cut. Rex turned to Red and Lacilia. He said it wasn't enough. If they were going to do it at that speed, they should do less movement and be mindful of inertia. He used a V/. Red said he still can't understand his technique and his sword trajectory is distorted. So how can it be better than theirs? Rex said it's only because he calculates everything. He asked if they understood and said that although it looked like art, it wasn't really it. He told them to show the world the trajectory of art. He said that it was a perfect recreation of the art technique, but it didn't lead to manual activation because the manual activation specification is somehow based on the game. And to get the most out of manual activation, they need to imagine that their weapon is dynamic motion for 7,980 yen excluding tax. Rex said that the weapon needs to be controlled by adjusting the speed and direction of the swing so that the imaginary motion sensor responds well, and it's a mysterious skill that no one in this world has. Red asked if he just had to swing the weapon. He said that everyone else was practicing hard, and would he be able to master it in just a month? Red was worried that he would fall behind the others. Rex thought that Red would be happy to know that he could operate the weapon however he wanted. He figured it was a little early, but let him try. He turned to Red and held out the sword. He was very surprised. Rex said it was his favorite sword of courage. Red disagreed and said that he knew it. Rex said he could see that Red didn't understand what he was getting at and said he would give him the sword. Red was shocked. Rex said that he had said at the beginning that if he died this sword would go to Red, that he was alive of course, but effectively dead, so now it was his. Red said in surprise that the sword was his. He said that the sword was heavy, that it was the sword of the adventurer Rang, and he didn't think he could wield it so easily. He said it was not for him. Rex said he heard from Nuku that Red wants to be a hero. He said that this sword belonged to the heroes of legends and asked if Red now wanted to give up the dream. Thoth swung the sword and said that the old man was no provocateur. He told Reds to watch out and that he would become a hero worthy of that sword, so that he would watch out for him. The weight of the sword pulled Red back. Rex said what an impertinent man he was. He went. Lacilia asked if he was going somewhere. He replied that he would bring them all the equipment they needed for training and asked if Lacilia was done with training. She replied that she was done for the day. She said that if he was going anywhere, it would be with her, and who knows what he might do if left alone. Rex said, well, she's a bore. They came to the alchemy room of the Adventurers Guild. In addition to the training grounds, the guild has other facilities open to adventurers of all ranks, including a melting pot that can be used for a fee of 1,001. Lacilia asked her brother why they had come to the melting pot. She said that she thought it was impossible to create gear in the melting pot. Rex remembered about the knife, the reward he got at the casino, the goblin sekach. He said that it could mostly be found in the treasure chests in the dungeons after the midway point. Lacilia replied that Red had told her about it while she was unconscious in bed. Rex won a lot of money at the casino, but got carried away and traded all the money for prizes. It was a knife and orichalcum made by a man who gave up adventuring when he was defeated by goblins. This knife deals 3 times damage to goblins, and a third less damage to other races. Attacking goblins with this knife reduces goblin abilities by 10%, so once equipped, the knife cannot be removed. Lacilia said that this knife from the story sounds not very useful. Rex said that there is a goblin cave west of Lixia Township where only goblins dwell, and if one happens to be there, one can use it as a weapon roll to get rid of it, because then it will be used as a throwing knife with a fixed attack value. He said that it was irrelevant to the case and brought a couple of knives to the cauldron. Lacilia stared in surprise. She asked if he wanted to say that he had the skills to make equipment in the cauldron. He said he didn't. There was an explosion in the cauldron. A rock was visible at the bottom. Lacilia said that the goblin cleaver had turned into a piece of metal. Rex said to look closer. The girl took a closer look. Rex was met at the guild house. He put a couple bags on the counter and said he'd like to sell this. The assistant offered to take a look. He looked through a magnifying glass and was very surprised. He realized that it was a piece of orichalcum, and the price of one piece of orichalcum was 10 million won. Rex was thanked. He told Lacilia that that was all they needed. She said that she didn't know that the cauldron had such a use as well. Rex replied that when you can't melt an object in the cauldron, it disintegrates into the material from which it was created. He explained that the goblin cleaver is made of orichalcum, so if you can't melt it down, you get a piece of orichalcum, and items obtained at the casino can't be sold in a store, but using such machinations you can sell them. He suggested that Lacilia come in. The people around were discussing that he aka a rang, a mediocrity. They say he managed to defeat the demon. He thought that there were more people here than usual, and the right decision was to come at noon. He approached the girl, to which she was surprised. She said that Mr. Rex is an orang adventurer, and it seems he got the wrong counter, and this counter is for customers. He replied that he knew. He threw out a huge amount of money and said it was his payment. Everyone was shocked and wanted to know how much money was there. Rex said that the request was to collect some equipment, and the reward was 300 million won. He thought that money is power. During the week while Red and the others were training, Rex was learning the elements of the game and building up his equipment and resources. It's important to have good equipment for training, but the gear he needs only drops out in dungeons with a very low chance. He went to the armory in town, but they didn't have anything good. The most important item is the Black Cat Blessing coin. The chance of getting it is only 0.1%, and he thought that at this rate he would go bald faster. Lacilia said that it was just trash. And then he learned that if one is too lazy to do something, why not make adventurers? Rex said that it would be difficult if these were popular items that everyone was after, but he felt that the items he was looking for were not very useful in this world. Lacilia replied that she was surprised when he said he was going to make a request to collect gear, but he had thought it through. He said that in this world, it is not customary for adventurers to make requests, so it makes sense that they are skeptical, but money changes the weight. He said that by paying his money to the guild in plain sight, you can be sure that they will go where they need to go. Rex said that people can't resist the magic of money. Lacilia said he made a nasty grimace again. Several days passed. The first 3 days there was no progress, they just watched. On the 4th day they started bringing things in, and from then on it became an endless stream. Eventually, after only 2 weeks, 90% of the stuff on the list was delivered. Rex had gotten a bunch of useful stuff without even leaving town. Since then, Red and his team's training has gotten even tougher. Nuku and Mana run around the training ground in iron sandals that make it hard to keep their balance. Red wears a framework of springs that covers his entire body while attaching to his armor, and weighted wristbands while training with his sword. Plana meditates with stupid round glasses that only spoil her beauty. People have begun to pay more and more attention to them. But that didn't stop Red and his friends from hobbling around, and in fact, they seemed pleased with their progress. Rex thought it was a nice sentiment. Iron sandals, weighted wristbands, and goggles have a hidden effect, increasing the value of abilities rather than lowering the current value. He thought he would like to be able to get even more equipment. The equipment was the same as in the game. There are 9 items that can be equipped. Weapons for left and right hands, armor for head, arms, legs, torso, and accessories up to 3 kinds. With the exception of some unique items, you can add up to 4 ability points to your armor if equipped with ability enhancing armor. Rex thought about the fact that there was no problem with training now. But in this case, there would be adventurers with high abilities but low current stats. This was part of his training plan, but it wasn't the only one. He thought that on the other hand, they need gear that can compensate for the disadvantages of low-level gear and increase the value of the bearer's ability, and now they only need an efficiency item and they can go and get it. Lacilia called out to her brother and said that she had just received a message from the guild that the Black Cat Blessing coins had been delivered. Rex happily said that at last. He apologized to Red and said that he would go to the nearest dungeon to get some light equipment. Red thought for a moment and said that there was a dungeon not far from here where he could get what he needed. Rex said about the ancient labyrinth of darkness. Red disagreed. The ancient labyrinth of darkness is one of the main objectives of this game. A dark place guarded by the most powerful demons of the 12 Deep Ruins. Even Rex couldn't clear it during his gamer past. It's a very difficult dungeon. He said that of course Lucilia would follow him and asked if that was the case. She said that if he wants to die, his business, but this body belongs to Rex. He repeated that it was dangerous, but she said she would follow him anyway. He wanted to disagree, but Lucilia said not to worry and that she would follow his instructions. Rex was surprised. The heroes found themselves in front of the entrance to the Labyrinth of Darkness. They noticed the frightening atmosphere. Rex said to listen that they were only here to get better equipment, and the goal was not to feed this dungeon or defeat the monsters here. Lucilia replied that she knew and swore on the name of House Tauren that she would not pull him down. Rex said that was great, and he would use it here. He flipped the black cat blessing coin. There was silence all around. Lucilia asked what it was. Rex replied that it was the effect of the coin, and now for a certain period of time, all the equipment he would get would have a guaranteed enchantment. The effect of enchanting gear is proportional to the strength of the dungeon, meaning that on this highest difficulty level of Labyrinth of Darkness, you can expect to find the best enchanted gear. Rex suggested they start, since the effect of the coin only lasts for 30 minutes. When they walked in, Lucilia awed. Rex said that the first enemy, the Damascus Gargoyle, was behind that door, and it wouldn't move until they attacked it or touched the door, so he asked them to be careful. The girl fell to her knees and covered her mouth. Rex asked what was wrong. She asked how he could be in such dense dark magic and if he was sure he would be okay. She asked if he was even human or what. He thought that maybe it was all because he was not from this world or his level. He told Lucilia that she would stay outside and he would go there alone like he planned. She shouted. She said he couldn't be selfish at such a time. She asked him not to go there as the place was too dangerous. She said it was up to him, but if he left, so would she. Rex turned to her. He said he had no intention of going there. Lucilia interjected in surprise. He apologized and said he should have explained it to her from the beginning. He told her he wasn't going to conquer the dungeon today. He will need to go deeper. He already got the treasure chest. A bunch of steel blades exchanged at the casino. The steel equipment itself is a common equipment that is not rare, the same one equipped by Lucilia, and can be easily bought in the store from NPCs. But the steel blades from the casino are different from normal. The items that can usually be bought from the store can't be normal if obtained from the demonic casino. Rex said he would proceed and threw the blade. A mimic appeared in front of him and screamed. Lucilia was surprised that the sword turned into a monster. The casino prize pool will be randomly selected from items available in the dungeon that have no selling price, which is why you can find mimics disguised as items as prizes in the casino. Rex said that normally a mimic turned into an item can't be placed normally in inventory, but the prizes in the casino go directly into inventory, so you can carry them around. Lucilia replied that it was good to know. She asked what was the point of him beating the mimic here and said that after all, only the weakest gear falls off him, which you can also get at a regular store. Rex replied that it's because Mimic is a level 10 small monster. He said that it was okay because he wasn't looking for the best gear. However, here was the best gear that even beginners could wear. He said that there is only one difference between this gear and what is sold in the stores, and that is the enchantment that is obtained because of the blessing of the black cat coin. Lucilia said that she had never felt the effects of the enchantments. He asked if she could use attack magic. Lucilia replied that it was a bit unexpected. She used Air Slash. Her attack chopped the tree in half. She said that as Rex could see, she had only mastered the lowest level of wind magic. Rex replied that if she was so strong at the lowest level, it was a great achievement. He handed her the 3 rings and told her now to try putting this on. She asked if she would be cursed if she wore this. Rex replied that he couldn't believe she could distrust him that much. He said to use the air cut again. She said how rude and put the rings on. Lucilia used the air cut. It swept through the woods. All the trees were cut down by her attack. She fearfully asked what it was. Rex replied that he told her it was an enchanted ring. The girl said that was impossible. She was fighting in close combat after all, and this was more like some kind of magic. The level of an item dropped from a monster depends on the level of the monster killed, and the strength of the enchantment cast on it depends on the recommended level of the place where the monster was created. The enchantments on this dropped item are based on the level of Labyrinth of Darkness dungeon, as the mimic was summoned in that location. The level of the Labyrinth of Darkness dungeon is 99, so the level of items dropped from this mimic is very low, and the maximum enchantment level is 99. The 3 rings that Rex gave to Lucilia were enchanted at plus 48, plus 62, and plus 71 to magic, for a total of 181. This compared to the stats that an experienced wizard of this place would only achieve in a lifetime. Lucilia asked if he meant to say that the value of these rings was greater than a human life. He replied that still the enchantment extends beyond just the rings, and the value of this equipment goes beyond just being strong. Rex said that there are many pieces of equipment that are weak but can be used by everyone, and there are pieces of equipment that are much stronger but can only be used by a few. He said that this enchanted gear could be equipped by any adventurer who was brave enough to dive into dungeons. Lucilia's hand was shaking. Rex held the jewelry in his hand and said that this was the power he was looking for, the best equipment to pump. When they got to the rest of the team, Rex was called out. He asked what was wrong with the guys. Red asked what was wrong with him, because he said he was going to the Labyrinth of Darkness, so everyone was worried about him. Rex said he was fine. Red said that from the looks of it, everything went well. He said he didn't want to worry him too much, but Rex is his mentor. Mana said she told him not to worry about Rex. Plana said Mana was a liar and worried just as much. Nuku said that either way, she was glad the 2 of them were okay. Rex turned to the guys. He said that a month without battles or adventures, they had followed his orders exactly, and now he could say that their training was over. He said let the adventures begin. Red shouted joyfully. Rex said that it was too early to tell, but there would be an important event before the adventures began. Nuku asked what the important event was. Rex said it was the culmination of all their training, a change of class. The team came to the temple. Rex thought this was the first time he had come here without being a player. Changing class in Kyo is quite easy. Just touch the statue of the corresponding class, and if you meet the requirements of the new class, the statue will light up and the class change will be completed. But not all temples have statues of all classes, and the number of classes varies from city to city. Some classes are rare and can only be found in the depths of the dungeons. The higher the class, the more powerful techniques can be mastered and the more bonus points you get when pumping. For example, the first warrior subclass, the fighter, has only 6 growth points, mostly in strength. The second subclass, the swordsman, has a growth bonus of 9 points. In addition, if one becomes an Imperial Swordsman, which is the third subclass, the number of bonus points would be 12. Rex thought about the purpose of the training imposed on Red and his friends is to make them increase their abilities, and the transition from the first subclass to the second subclass to be accomplished at around level 4. He thought that if they succeeded, they could start the adventure with higher ability points and a higher growth factor than they had originally had, which was why Red and his team had been in training from morning to night for the last month. He thought they could see the results in person. Rex asked if they would start. Nuku said she would go. She held out her hand, standing in front of the statue. The statue lit up. Rex congratulated her on her successful change of class. Nuku thanked. The second subclass Nuku switched to was Combat Mage, a subclass that required some physical training despite being a magic class. Mana said that she also went. She stretched out her hand and went from being a priest to becoming a bishop. Rex didn't think she would make it to the end, being at the 3rd level. He thought of Mana having a natural talent that she was able to develop through practicing prayer, raising MZ, and concentration. The MZ and concentration scores increased at an extraordinary rate until finally the required values for a class change were reached. Plana also approached the statue and held out her hand. From a scout, she had become a sniper. Rex thought that Plana, who originally had ideal stats for Archer, had the easiest time meeting the requirements of her new class. Red said it was finally his turn and asked what he should do. Rex didn't tell Red what kind of jet class he would choose. He only asked him for two things. It was to increase his strength and to learn how to use the Sword of Valor. He showed Red the direction. Rex said that it was Young Lion, the subclass that Red should choose. Nuku asked him to stop. She said, "Isn't the Young Lion a useless subclass? It's not like it brings little to no benefit." Red said with a smile that he believed the old man. The Sword of Valor appeared. Red was surprised to see it shining. Rex told him to raise his sword. Rex thought about how the Young Lion is the weakest of all the classes. All it has is strength and survivability. That's it. But it is the only class that can change depending on the item its wielder is equipped with. He thought that the Young Lion would evolve by equipping certain items and conforming to certain equipment limitations. The Sword of Courage used to be in Rex's hands. As the inscription says, it is a sword that once belonged to a brave man. It is one of the treasures required to awaken the Young Lion's strength. Rex thought about being above the first warrior subclass, the fighter, and the second warrior subclass, the swordsman, and even beyond the Imperial Swordsman, the third warrior subclass. Rex congratulated Red and said that as of today, he had the fourth warrior subclass. The latter held the sword in his hands in surprise. The team arrived at the Adventurers Guild. At the counter, Red was told that he was a D-rank adventurer and asked what his team name was. He said Sword of Valor. The girl asked what kind of mission the Sword of Valor team wanted to accomplish. Red hesitated. He said that this was the intermediate dungeon 7-colored lava tunnel and they would like to complete this quest. The young man approached Mr. Wertain and said that this was trouble and a team of newcomers brought up by the adventurer Arangor Rax. Wertain slapped the table after hearing about the lava tunnel for recruits and called Rex a bastard. One of the guys at the table said, "Well, what's he so?" Wertain said that Rex was a loner adventurer. An adventurer with an ostentatious name and career could be characterized in one word: a crook. He said Rex was mortally wounded and still managed to take the demon by surprise. Wertain said that when he heard such tales, he was glad that there was an adventurer with a twist in town. He said he realized immediately that he was wrong in that assumption. He said that Rex was an orang adventurer who had never even attempted to conquer the dungeon, subjected newcomers to brutal training, and only watched from the sidelines himself. He said that Rex was only spending tons of money, collecting junk items and earning fame among adventurers, and it looks like Yuda he was switched. In the end, Wertain was very disappointed to see the newcomers carrying the junk he collected, and he laughing at them. Wertain believed that Rex thought he could make a name for himself by completing the task of the Love Tunnel. This is a dungeon that only the most experienced adventurers can conquer. He figured that adventurers were forbidden to interfere with each other. Wertain said that Ren and Jack, if they followed him, they might be demoted or even expelled from the guild, so he was on his own. Ren apologized and said that he had decided that he would follow Wertain no matter what. Jack smilingly told him to cry some more. Wertain knew it was against the rules, but it was the duty of the older adventurer to save those who had strayed from the right path, and he must stop them before they entered the dungeon. After a while, they found themselves in the mountains. Wertain noticed Rex's command and told him to aim for the legs but try not to hurt them. Jack prepared himself. He attacked with an icy rain right under their feet. Rex asked Wertain how to make sense of it. The man replied that he had heard here that some weirdo wanted to ruin the newcomers. He said he would stop Rex if he had to. Rex, stopping Lacilia with his hand, said he was clear and understood what he was getting at. He asked if it was true that the point was to show strength. Wertain shouted to Ran and Jack that he had something. Rex used Ice Rain. Jack didn't understand how he did it without preparation. Ren said he had never heard anywhere that he was a wizard. Ren headed into the battle. Wertain yelled for him to stop, and that Rex was not someone who would be easy to deal with. Rex said that Ren had good speed, but that he was in too much of a hurry. He asked if he thought it was like him opening treasure chests. Ren replied that he knew what he was doing. He said not to mess with him and used a knife throw. Rex also used a knife throw. Multiple knives were aimed at Ren. Wertain yelled to Ren as he hit the ice block. Ren didn't realize what it was and said he couldn't move. Wertain realized that it was a shadow knife. Not only magic, but also thieving skills. He thought that it was not surprising that he was not hurt at all in such a situation. Wertain was shouted something behind him. It was Rex. He was using a quick cut. He used a high art and activated a dual art. Wertain looked on in surprise. He drew his sword. He used Sword Rebellion and thought that he was surrounded by countless numbers of demons. He had fought to the death with dragons, and he had defeated them all with this sword. He shouted that he would not be defeated. Suddenly, he saw his sword break at the very base and fall. Wertain was very surprised and said that this is how it means. Rex asked if he wanted to continue. Wertain let go of the hilt of the sword. He said he was giving up. He thought that Ren wasn't the only one throwing knives with the intent to kill. All he himself was thinking about was how he could beat this guy. But Rex didn't hurt them when he intercepted the knife, or when he disarmed him with his sword. He thought that they were defeated by this man, not only physically, but also mentally. Wertain apologized for this to Rex. He said that not only for this time, but also for underestimating him. He said that he thought there was no such thing as a solitary orang adventurer and treated him as a rogue. He said that with a man of his level on their side, he could be sure that even the 7-colored lava tunnel dungeon wouldn't prove dangerous to them. Rex asked if he thought they needed help. He said they were the only ones who would enter the dungeon. Wertain was surprised and said that it wasn't funny, that there was no way they could conquer the lava tunnels alone. Rex said he had a few things he needed to talk to Wertain about, so he asked him to follow him to the entrance of the dungeon. The team, smiling, listened to Rex. He said that it would be Wertain who would witness his students reach the heights. Red said the mentor was great, the way he parried the blow, his movements as he severed the sword. Nuku said that Red seemed to have a crush on Rex. He shouted that it wasn't true and he wasn't in love. Lucilia thought about the fact that her brother couldn't be defeated by someone like Wertain, so her brother also gave up his sword of valor that he had carried with him since the beginning of his journey. She still wasn't sure she wanted to be their comrade. The 7-colored lava tunnel is a dungeon famous for its bad reputation. Their goal was to gain experience, but it was better to have a companion who could ensure the enemy was defeated in case of danger. But if Rex is with them, everyone will think that they only passed this dungeon because of the help of a rank A adventurer. Lucilia thought that was why she, an unknown adventurer, was chosen to accompany their team. Rex asked Lucilia to forgive him for putting him through all the hardships. She reluctantly agreed. He said that's why he decided to give her this sword just in case. She asked if he was sure, and if it was the sword he was using now. Rex replied that he had Wertain with him, so she could keep it. He said that Red and the others are in a way only his students, and she, Lucilia, is his best friend in this world, and he wouldn't really want her to get hurt. She repeated what he said about her being the best and agreed. She said she would take him then. Rex asked her to watch Red and the boys for him. She thought about being the best, but she only helps him because he is in her brother's body, and the only thing she is protecting is Rex's body, and the one in it, she doesn't care. She didn't realize what she was even thinking. The girl walked on, swinging her new sword. She was called out by a surprised Nuku and Red. Lucilia motioned for everyone to go and told them not to worry, because if they got into trouble, she would use this sword that her brother had entrusted to her, and she would cut the enemy in half. They found themselves in the 7-colored lava tunnel. Plana told everyone to take their weapons. She said it looked like they were in for a long night. Nuku offered to look at the results of their training. In front of them was a large blue slug. The slug is said to be the 2nd strongest monster after the goblin, but don't underestimate it. It is in the intermediate dungeon, and its level is much higher than theirs. In addition, according to Rex, these monsters have a strong attack known as the beginner's killer. Mana shouted to avoid its acid. At that moment, the slug released its acid. Red dodged and shouted that it flew. He thought that it was a weakening attack after all, the smoke. What causes the 4 weakenings are poisoning, paralysis, exhaustion, and stillness. Red was enveloped by the smoke, he shouted. Red created a barrier in front of him. He thought that this ring was incredible. With a barrier ring, the wearer can use his magic to create a barrier that prevents attacks until enough damage is dealt. The barrier created by this ring is so weak that it can be destroyed by a single blow from a goblin. But it also means that you can infinitely block attacks that do no damage. Of course, this includes weakening attacks, since the barrier is not affected by weakening attacks like poisoning, paralysis, silence, and so on. In other words, this barrier is invulnerable to non-damaging attacks such as poison smoke. Red said that the blue slug was of the aquatic type, so he used an earth strike. The slug took damage. Red was glad that it worked. Not only did weakening attacks make this dungeon a killer for newcomers, but the slime in the 7-colored lava tunnel could have one of the 7 elements, including the lack of it. You can identify its elemental element by the color of the slime and attack with the element to which it is vulnerable. Red spotted Acid and yelled that he was close. Nuku was behind him and yelled for Red to be careful. She yelled for Red Flash not to dare break and used the fire cannon. By spending mana, you can use a spell with a fire element called Fire Cannon, and its price is only 50 million. However, after each use, there is a 1% chance that it will break, which it did. Plana shouted for the others to keep advancing. She shot arrows of the elements. Mana was using the Sacred Arsenal. It is light element magic for beginners, which has a great advantage over the 4 attributes and is strong against the element of darkness. Red thought gravely, but they were so close to their goal and there was only a little bit left. He noticed the acid and realized he had to dodge. Red was thrown back and he was all battered. Mana said about the barrier ring and said she would heal him, so he backed up. Red thought about the fact that if the barrier is broken, it can't be repaired in battle, and if that's the case, now is the time. He decided it was the right time to attack and used a ground strike. The monster was defeated. Mana fearfully called out to him. Red activated the barrier again. Once the barrier is destroyed, the ring cannot be used again for 10 minutes, but it can be removed in non-combat situations to quickly restore the barrier. Plana said it was too reckless and Mana that her heart almost jumped out. Red said he was sorry. There had been an upgrade. When there is a level increase, strength and magic are restored to full strength and weaknesses disappear. This is the main reason why Rex sent them to this dungeon now. It said that levels rise quickly in the beginning, but after the 10th level, the amount of experience required increases and the pumping slows down. But on the other hand, if the level is low, one can easily increase levels by continuing to move forward without resupply. Nuku asked if Red was okay and said that if he thought he couldn't handle it, they could just go back. Red replied that they were continuing. He figured they still had many battles to fight and many levels to raise, and he would not be adventurous if he missed such an opportunity. He thought about how the monsters in this dungeon would be theirs. The team successfully defeated the enemies one after another. The dungeon had been cleared. Red thought that now that they had finished off all the enemies in the dungeon, they would know exactly what to do next. He thought that their team was stronger than ever. Plana said that it has gotten too quiet and there are no more enemies here. Red said that there was only one left then. He said it was the boss of the 7-colored lava tunnels dungeon. Red thought that it was a strong opponent.